Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Button and I'm a granite sculptor. And welcome to video number 9 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. This project will probably be more than one video. I'll try to capture some of me working on it as opposed to just before and after. It's difficult to get all this done in studio working alone, and because part of it is the material is really bad for the equipment. It picks up lenses and dust, and it's just not good. So, but what we're going to do, I'm going to show you. I mentioned in the beginning, the first thing I did when I started at Gary's at Celestial is he literally handed me a hand machine and a chisel and said, hold the chisel like this, hold the hand machine like this, now open up that niche, carve the stone, and he walked away. And that was it. There wasn't anything like this. This is a lesson that Giuliano was more likely to use with someone to give them a basic understanding of the tools and the stone. And what it ends up doing in the long run is it helps you maintain control, because you can produce that flat area that you need that provides a reference for the entire rest of the job. Now, this is a cube of, I forget it, this is Kershaw, or this has got a really big grain. This is nasty stone. I'd never recommend this for carving. This is a free piece of stone, but it's split on 5 of the 6 sides, and on the 6th side it's got a great big scratch through it. Whether it's a crack or a scratch, I really don't care. I'm going to pretend this isn't a flat side. I'm going to square up the other sides first. Probably going to do the back. I'll true it up, and I'll probably shim this a little bit so I'm not worried about trying to maintain this plane. But after we do a panel on this face, we're going to do a panel in a way that we can transfer it to the other 4 sides that are tangent to it or adjacent to it, so that they're square, that this is a flat panel and these are 90 degrees, these corners are 90 degrees. And we're going to have to do a little bit of figuring to figure out where the volume makes the most sense. And we'll probably end up splitting it about halfway between, because this end is wide, we'll probably split about half here and half here so I can take this off later. This is a really good exercise to show you how to use the hand machines, how to axe a stone, which is finishing it with a chisel to scrape it smooth, and just what's involved. Now, years ago, this was basic knowledge for people that did much sculpture work, because years ago you would get a piece of stone for a statue, and typically there's 2 ways of doing it. You either get a piece that's long, that's another, say maybe a foot taller than you need, and then you carve it, do all the sculpture work, put everything together before you actually finish it. And before you undercut anything and you're happy with all the placement, at some point you cut the bottom off to cut the joint, and you have to be able to square the faces and square the bottom to the vertical so your statue doesn't tip, so it stands flat. Nowadays, if you order stock for a statue, typically they'll put it on the big diamond saw, and they'll saw the joint or the bottom, they'll saw it to height, and you'll leave an extra few inches on the back of the stone, so that if you have a problem before you cut behind the figures, you can sink it and push it back and cut that extra off. And then if you don't need it, you just go and you knock it off as you're carving. But that's how I was trained, because we got all our joints diamond sawed. I'm going to show you how to cut this. I want to show you how I lift this. Now, I'm not going to get into a bunch of disclaimers. This work will kill you. It won't just hurt you, it will kill you. The dust will kill you, the stone will crush you. I like having a soft clay floor, because if the stone falls on me, I might just have a mush foot instead of one that's pinched off. You're on your own with picking this stuff up. I'll show you how I do it. It probably is okay. It's okay for me, it hasn't hurt me yet, but I don't know if you're going to be as conscientious as I am, so you need to be careful. I'm going to show you what we normally do, and beyond that, you're on your own. So don't send your lawyers after me. This is ridiculous. This is hard work, and this is dangerous work, and I want to show you how to do it, and there's only so many ways to show you. one of the things with doing this work to square up a piece of stone like this that's really important is that a lot of people that are on the computer, and this could be done by hand if it was say it was a piece of marble or a piece of soapstone or a piece of limestone or whatever. You know, limestone, marble would probably be more likely to be found. You could do it all hand driven, and you just wouldn't do it in granite. Doing this work, you have to be confident. You can't be timid. There's a lot of people that will get a pneumatic hand machine and they're terrified of it. They've got death grips on everything they're holding. They look like they're going to go play a football game, and they wrestled an astronaut to get their space suit and everything else with padded gloves, with crazy. You want to do that? Go ahead. But at some point, you have to physically make that stone into the shape you want to make it into. And if you don't have the confidence to attack that stone and make it happen, it's going to take you 10 times longer if you ever get finished. So this is a good exercise to learn how aggressive you can be with the tools instead of just sitting there and running forever on a piece of stone and making no difference in it. There's videos like that on YouTube. If you want to watch them, go watch them. I'm not going to do that. It's hard for me to get video of this process because it happens so fast, but it's not fast enough. I can leave the camera on indefinitely to try to get everything. So we'll see what we can do. But first thing we're going to do is I'll show you how I pick it up with my crane and why I like this crane, and we'll go from there. I prefer to use a chain hoist. I've got geared trolleys, which means when I pull this, it runs back and forth. I don't just push it. That gives me a lot of control over my stone, because these stones, once you get them up off the ground, it's very deceptive. It may weigh 2 or 3 tons, but you can move it with a couple fingers, and it doesn't stop on a dime. The nice thing about these chain falls is that compared to an electric lift or hoist, you'll be stabbing the button trying to get it to stop right where you want. As they fatigue, they tend to drop and the brakes don't work as well. With this, I can go literally one click, one tooth at a time, and I can have super control. So, but I'll get video. I've got a yoke on this, and what we're going to do, the yoke will help spin the stone or turn the stone. We'll get some up close video. You have to be very careful when you're lifting an odd piece of stone like this, because it's not going to be balanced. You generally will get part of a belt outside of the stone, not completely under, and that will help locate the stone and grab the belt so that when you pick it up, it doesn't go anywhere. Now, you may have to shorten one belt versus the other in order to keep it from rolling out. And you got to think of where the stone may go. You may have to move the stone and then reorganize the belts a little bit better in order to pick it up safely. Because this will kill you. This isn't a game. And you have to think of where the stone may go, whether you release it and it pitches towards you, or if it's going to tumble one way to the right or to the left. This is how the stone looks with the belts, with the yoke, with everything, with the trolley that you pull to run the stone back and forth. Okay, Granite tends to have two faces that split in a relatively straight or level square plane. Now, it's very common to see granite with drill holes. And see, this has got one drill hole over here, right there, where they drilled it, and that one drill hole split a long ways down the face, relatively straight. Okay? So this usually is the rift. That's the easy part to break. Then you'll have the run, which will be perpendicular to that. Now we could think about this side or this side being the run. Just from my experience, this is not a cut or a split face. This is probably, and you can see there's little layers in here. This is probably the natural face that was exposed on the stone that was on the top. When they started digging down into the quarry, this was on the top. And so this, and another clue is that that's where they sawed it. They sawed it across there. This is the head. This is the head grain. This is looking down at the end of the stump or the end of a board where it's very hard to break it across here. So it's normally sawed. So this would be the face we'd carve typically for like a granite bas-relief or something like that. Now, none of this makes any difference with marble. Marble doesn't have this kind of run and rift. But with granite, you'll have the rift that splits pretty straight. Then you'll have the run that tends to shift. It tends to dive and lift. And if you look, these two sides have, this is sort of humped out here, and then this runs in. It's almost like a parallelogram. Can you see that it shifts a little bit? So this is your run. Got to run, got to run. This is your rift. This is your head grain. This is your head grain. And this is natural. So because this has been exposed to the weather for a bazillion years, there's no telling how stable this is going to be. This may be very bad. But what I've got to do is figure out how much stone I've got to take off to make this level. And I'm going to try to split the difference between the top and bottom. But looking at it, this is pretty close to the thinnest spot. And so I'm probably going to have to go down to here, square it across, and then on the other side we'll have to take a whole bunch off because we're going to have, it's going to be low here, and so we'll have to take a triangular section off this other face. So we're going to spend a fair amount of time wasting off a bunch of stone. Now, how do you plan this? How do you figure your numbers? And it's important, if you don't know how to do this, how you've done it in the past, get a notebook, get a composition book or a steno pad or something like that. I'm not into doing it all on your phone. Just drop your phone, you get it wet, you'll smash it, whatever. Get an old plain old pen and paper and a notepad and write it down. Write down when you start, how long you work, if there's a job order or something like that, write it down and keep track of it. It won't make any difference until you've got a book full. I mean, it may take a year or two before that notebook matters. And then you'll be able to see trends as to how you've improved, where you're doing the same project again, and it took you half the time as it did 2 years ago. And then you can start figuring out how many hours it's going to take per square foot or per linear foot or per surface area or whatever. You can also keep track of your tools. I generally figure that if I put a tool on this stone, it's going to last 1 to 2 hours for a carbide tip chisel on granite. That's an average. And so if that tool costs, say it costs $30 for a straight chisel and $50 for a 9-point, that means I'm burning through that much money in 1 to 2 hours if I keep it sharp. If I don't keep it sharp, it'll last longer, but it'll take me longer to do the job, which is the same end result of the number of hours I've got to labor in it. So because my overall, my money's spread out so much more, I'm not working as fast. So keep track of your tools, figure up your expendables, you know, your disposable cost, your whatever you eat up, and then you've got to pay for electricity to run your compressor and electricity to run your suction, and you've got to pay to clean up, and you got to pay to set up before you can even work. And you need to keep track of these things until you start learning what you can do and how long it takes to do it. So let's start laying this out, and we'll start working on this stone here before long. Okay, this is a 3/4 inch Bicknell full stroke, 3/4 D, 1 inch D. This is also a Bicknell, just local. It's surprisingly similar to a trowel and Holden hammer, I'll just say that. But I like this fingertip design. That's what I prefer, so I always buy those from I've used Bicknells for years. Got a few plumb blocks. We'll probably have 2 sets that I'll end up using. And these are my grandfather's. These are all the same exact height. That's important with a plumb block. Now I got a video on plumb blocks. I'm not going to sit and do the whole thing all over again. I'll talk about it some, but I go into more depth with plumb blocks in another video. If you don't have any plumb blocks, you make some. You can literally just saw up a square piece of usually hardwood's better. They just have to be the same height, and usually make one end skinnier than the other so you know which way to set them up. So you only wear one end on the stone as opposed to both ends. So this could be, just a plain wedge shaped like that out of any wood. If they're made out of wood, if you screw a piece of aluminum plate to the bottom of it, they won't wear as fast. The aluminum will wear and you can replace it, or steel. Got a combination square to measure depth. I've got a short straight edge. I've also got a longer straight edge in a level. Now, the longer straight edge will help because the short straight edge doesn't quite span the stone diagonally. It's just a little bit short. The reason I like using this, and this is just a piece of straight zinc, galvanized, whatever stuff from the local box store that I bought 20 years ago. It's the same exact width as my good straight edge. And so it doesn't impact the depth if I change from one to the other. If you used a ruler or a straight edge that was a 1/4 inch difference, it's going to affect the depth on your measurement. You're going to be resetting all the time. You don't want to do that. You want to set your tri-square to the given depth and never touch it. Set it hard and leave it there. So get one you can really tighten up. And then I got a variety of chisels and whatever and glasses. So set this in. I got my suction pulled over. I'm going to work with this suction boom, and we'll set it right here on the corner of the stone, and I can blow it into it. It'll work great. Let's show you how to get started. Now, as a very quick, rough guess to see how much stone I've got to take off, I'll start over here where it's low, and this is hopefully going to be about the bottom. It's tall over in this upper corner. So I'm just going to set my level, good edge down because it's a beat up level because it's in the stone shed. I'm going to set it here. I'm going to level the bubble. I'm going to see that I've got just under 2 inches. It's like 1 7/8 about. So I'm going to be taking close to 2 inches off this top in order to get it level. And that's good to know to start. It doesn't matter where level is. You create level. You're in charge. So that's what I keep talking about. You need to be assertive enough to cut this stone and make it happen. It ain't going to just fall off on its own. So I know I can roughly square up something right here just to get kind of level so it looks sort of level. Even check my plumb block across the top of the short level if I wanted to be that uptight. Right now I don't care because I'm going to have to surface the whole thing. I know I'm going to have to cut down a couple inches over here, and so I'll do that to get it to level, and then I'll have to check level over here the same way, and I'll check my straight edge across my plumb blocks. My straight edge will be my level until it levels out, and then once that happens, I'm golden. And so I can do that, and then I'll know once I get level over here as I approach it, I'll check it from both sides to make sure that it's level. And we'll square this face up. So we'll open this up with saws a little bit to break it out, but I'm going to try to do 1, 2, 3, 4 corners to get these corners right. And then I'll pull the panel down in the middle, crown it down all together till it's level, and I can make a really nice panel, and we'll have a nice flat piece of stone, and it will become effectively the joint, and we will reference that. We'll transfer it to each side from there. So without doing a bunch of numbers crunching, we're not going to sit here and do math and figure it's got to go exactly 1 inch and 3/16 here and 1 inch and 7/8 here, and we're just going to level it up with that old level. Let's grab the saws. One more piece of equipment that I didn't mention yet. This is a rough stone. This is all rough all the way around. I don't work with anything in my pockets because it takes about, just literally within the day, you'll destroy a brand new pair of heavy jeans. You'll abrade the face on them, and your jeans will fall apart. This is a job you make sure you wear an apron. Now, aprons can be made out of suede, which is not the quality that I like. But you want the rough side of your leather to be out. This is a smooth grain leather, shoe leather. I went to a cobbler or shoe store where they actually did repairs, and I ordered actually a couple of big pieces. Made one for me and one for my cousin. And I made this over 20 years ago, and anytime I work stone, rough stone, anything that I'm gonna be near, I wear it. And it still hasn't worn out yet. So it's a fantastic apron, and it's really the best money you'll spend. Now, the way I do my aprons, a lot of aprons come and they just have a grommet or a hole, or the cord is tied to each side. And what that does is that stresses this corner when you pull it. My apron has a belt that goes all the way around me. It's stitched to the apron to hold the apron, but it's loose. There's extra leather between the two stitchings. So when I tighten this belt and clip it around my waist, it doesn't stress the leather at all. And that's why one of the reasons why this has lasted so long. Another thing that I prefer is to have a strut on the back of from the neck piece down to the belt. I can adjust this if I happen to get fat like I have over the years. I'm not skinny like I used to be. But this takes all the pressure off the back of my neck. So my belt helps support this, and I like it better than the full cross back. This is just more comfortable for me. And my belt's fully adjustable. But if you make an apron, or if you buy one and modify it like this, when you sew your leather up, it's important to have a piece on top, a piece on the bottom, and then the leather in between. This will be infinitely stronger. This is why seams on car seats have a strip of beading around them, because that produces a much stronger seam. And this also takes the burden of the stitching off the leather to where it only penetrates so that it doesn't pull against it. It pulls against all these little fibers. So this apron is 23 or some odd years old. I made it almost immediately because I went through 2 or 3 pairs of pants in just the first week, and I can't afford that. Make a good apron. Get it long enough to wear, and whenever you work rough stone, wear it. Well, I've been putting this video together, and I'm running out of time. It's getting up into the 25-minute range, and I don't want to make this video long. I'm really going to try to keep them, between 20 and 25 minutes and not go into the 30-minute range. And this is part of why it's difficult to do these videos, is that there's so much involved if you're not familiar with the process. There's so many steps, and there's so many reasons for all the steps that all matter. Because if I assume you know something, the whole assume game people play with that word. I'm going to try to lay it out there and tell you why I'm doing it. And with the assumption, I prefer it to be with the understanding that y'all are actually going to pay attention, so that when I do the same thing on the next stone, I don't have to stop and explain every step. I can say, when I did this on the squaring the stone, or when I did a video on the plumb blocks or whatever, all of it's going to be captured so you can go back and study it. The frustrating part to me is that I love to cut stone, and in the in the time it's taken me to video enough to have a 25 or 6-minute video, put it on the computer, edit it, trim it, clip it, fade it, whatever, and then come back and do another thing, I probably could have had this entire thing cut. And so I can afford to do this in certain circumstances where this is discretionary work. This is just what I feel like doing, and I'm doing it to try to help people learn. When I'm cutting a regular job that's money, that's sold, they're not paying me to screw around. I got to get it done. And so I can only take so much time. So I'm going to try to take almost too much time to explain projects that I can do whatever I feel like on them, versus something where I'm contractually obligated to get that stone done, cut it, and get it out. They're waiting for it. They're looking for it. They don't want me to take an extra 2 months because I spent, twice as long cutting it in order to get video to show everybody. So I'll do the best I can. But we'll start the next video up with working on this stone and getting it cut and starting to lay it out. I've got to get a couple of my little side grinder saws with the diamond blades to help open it up faster, and we'll start cutting stone. So once again, my name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.